Ever feel something odd or funky, but you just blew it off or thought it might be just part of getting older? Or maybe you thought you were too busy or too overloaded to deal with it. But what if that something started out maybe a little annoyingly nagging at you? Maybe it eventually turned out to be more significant. Maybe it persisted and you couldn't ignore it. Maybe it became more of an interrupter of what my life is supposed to be. So where are you on your personal health journey right now? Your physical, your mental, your emotional health. Are you doing everything you can to ensure that every day you're caring for your health holistically so you can live your best life today and tomorrow? If you're like me and many other women over 45, you're trying to make good, healthy choices and live with more intention. So I went through a much less intense version of what my guest Heather today will share, but I immediately had a connection with Heather when we met a little bit over a year ago, as I had newly discovered I have several food sensitivities. And again, it's going to pale in comparison to what you're going to hear from Heather and her experience. But I think you'll find her story so interesting, and it may raise questions for you and your health as well. Join us as we discuss what many others over 45 have experienced, some type of health interruption, and how, also like many of you, Heather intentionally paused to redefine and reimagine and more holistically and happily redesign her life. Okay, so I'm here today with Heather Ardema, who I met through a mutual friend. And at the time, I was still somewhat challenged of what I could actually eat with a new diagnosis of food sensitivities to gluten, dairy, and corn. I felt like there was nothing else for me to eat. But when I heard Heather's story, which she's going to share more with us today, my scenario seemed much less bothersome, and I was yet even more intrigued. So Heather is a board certified and functional medicine certified health coach and the founder of The Root of Wellbeing, a whole body wellness and weight loss coaching boutique. I love the name boutique on that, by the way. She's an aspiring minimalist, a real food advocate, and a big fan of living a lighter life. After decades of an overloaded, addicted to busy schedule, which again, you can all identify with, she's now freer, happier, much more energetic than she's ever been before. So her passion now is helping women in their prime release the complication and clutter that's weighing them down so they can make space for the things that really matter the most. So the details on how to take a deeper dive into Heather's work and her website and other references will be included in the notes and the transcript posted with this podcast. So welcome, Heather.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Wendy. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's so good to have you here, especially, unfortunately we can't meet over a restaurant like we have in the past, but COVID just does it for all of us.
All right. I'll take what I can get. It's still so good to see you.
Okay. So Heather, as you know, the focus here is being life reimagined, sharing your insights so that those of us over 45 can better navigate all the detours life can throw our way. So how this has also shaped who we are today. So tell your story. Tell everybody a little bit more about what got you to my door and what actually got you to the point of developing this whole path that you're on with The Root of Wellbeing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for asking. And I will start off with the fact that I've always been active. And I have always loved doing things, and I was always hungry for everything. I was hungry for life, hungry for friends, hungry for experiences, situation. I just wanted to be involved in everything. And from a young age, I had something called FOMO. Have you heard of FOMO?
Absolutely. Yep.
I'm
a FOMO person too. Yep.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of FOMO. So I made sure that I was really involved and active. And so that's pretty much who I am as a person. Now, in terms of where did things really shift and change? Well, went to college, graduated, got the master's, did all the things you were supposed to do.
Supposed to do. I love,
yep,
supposed to do. Yep.
Yep. Got a corporate job in the department that, I thought, oh, my parents will be really proud of me because I'm in the research department. That means I'm using my math skills and my stat skills and did all those things. And I will say that there were some very enjoyable experiences. I did get to travel the world. I did get to present to executives, and I always liked the challenges. So there were some really, really powerful experiences in those corporate years. But deep, deep, deep down, I felt empty. And I felt like there was something more for me to do. And I would look, comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Yes.
I would look at my friends in other industries or my siblings, or I would look at anybody else and think, gosh, they have a more meaningful life. They're doing something more important. But I didn't know what it could be. And so I was basically stuck doing my corporate job and day in, day out, show up, do my thing, enjoy my coworkers, but really deep down, just know this is not really it. Well, in my early 30s, I had, I guess what some would call a health crisis. I woke up one day and my wrist was really, really hurting me. And I had gone downhill skiing the day before with my husband, and I thought, oh, I must have held those ski poles too tightly. We were going really fast down the mountain, and I thought maybe that's what it was. The pain stayed in my wrist for 2 days, and then 2 days later, it flipped over to my other wrist. I didn't know it then, but this is a common sign of rheumatoid arthritis. So you'll get joint pain, and then it will flip over onto the opposite joint. So if it's in your left wrist, it will go to your right wrist. Your left ankle, then it can go to your right ankle. That's just one symptom of it. For other people, it can manifest differently, but for me, that's what it was. So I tried to ignore it. And
like everybody would in your 30s, especially. You don't think rheumatoid arthritis.
No way. I was my early 30s even. Right. And so I did my best to ignore it, keep doing my thing. And I didn't always have flares. And so I was still able to live really out loud. So do the skiing, do all the mountain biking, do all the active stuff. I mean, really from my childhood, as I mentioned, I always wanted to be involved in whatever it was. And so hungry for everything. And in my early 30s, I was still hungry for everything, every experience I could have. So I dealt with it. And it was when I was pregnant with my second. So I have 2 boys, and I was pregnant with my second, and the rheumatoid arthritis flares were horrific. So I would have one in my knee, and I wouldn't be able to walk, in my jaw, and I wouldn't be able to open my mouth to drink a cup of water. And I got up one morning, and it was 4:45 in the morning, and I was in so much pain. I called my parents, and I just bawled, and they said, it might be time for you to get a formal diagnosis. And so I think this was like 6 or 7 years later. I go to the doctor that day. They do all the blood tests, and they said, wow, usually when women are pregnant, their flares are not bad because you have more just basically juice in the body. And so it's surprising that your flares are so bad. But yes, you definitely have rheumatoid arthritis. However, you probably have some other autoimmune conditions as well. So since then, I found out I had something called Sjogren's, which is a dryness in the body, which is why my rheumatoid arthritis was so bad during that pregnancy. I ended up with psoriasis, which is a skin condition, and a few others. And so here I am feeling like, are you kidding me? I'm now in my late 30s, and I've got this laundry list of autoimmune conditions, but I still want to mountain bike. I still want to play. I still want to be active with my kids. And so I decided, I went to my rheumatologist and I said, do you think if I change my diet that I'll have any luck? And she was very quick to say no. And she was very quick to say. And
it's a female, and that's what you said she, so it's even a female rheumatologist.
Yes. Okay. And I had said to her, I heard that tomatoes might not be good for me. Now, I love tomatoes. So when she said no, I'm like, oh, good. I get to keep the tomatoes in my diet. Right. But
Right.
there was something deep down where I didn't like how dismissive she was. And she said, well, there's no research. There's no data. And I did say, well, of course not. Do you think a tomato farmer is going to have the money to pay for data? And she's like, well, no, don't change the diet. And she's like, okay, you don't want to be on this drug. How about this drug? Because at that time they were talking about having me be on some very, very toxic drugs that would shorten my lifespan by 10 to 15 years. And one of the side effects of one of the drugs was cancer.
And that, not like dry mouth side effect or watery eyes side effect, but shortness, duration of life and
lymphoma.
Yeah.
And then we would just cross that bridge when we came to it.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And it just did not feel right to me. And so I talked to my husband, and at the time we were pretty much the standard American diet, which, the acronym is SAD, the SAD diet, standard American diet. And, but I didn't think I was really eating unhealthy. We weren't going to McDonald's. We weren't going to the typical fast food places, but I had a lot of gluten in my diet, a lot of dairy, a lot of grains in my diet. And for some of us, we can tolerate those foods, no problem. But for others, they are hindrances to us feeling our best. And so I told my husband, I am going to try this thing called a paleo diet. And he said, well, have fun with that.
Right. Me and the boys are not doing the paleo diet.
He's like, good luck. Good luck. Yeah. Let me know how it goes. Yeah. But the beauty is that we had friends who had already gone paleo, and they invited us over for dinner. So I decided that was going to be my day one. Okay. So got up that day and I'm like, what am I going to eat? Can't have any of the cereal. Can't have this. Can't have that. I ate a head of broccoli. I did not know what to eat. I was like, gosh, what can I eat? There's nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing is what I felt like. This is so restrictive. Yeah. And there's no way I'm going to last more than 2 days is what I was thinking. So we go to our friend's house for dinner. It was delicious. And they had made such an amazing meal. And driving home, my husband, Randy, says to me, hey, I think I'm in. I think I'm going to try this too. Let's do it for a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Let's see what happened. Well, you want to know what happened? I'm going to tell you. So on day 31, we did a little bit over a month. On day 31, my body stopped flaring. I was having flares every single day because as we tried this new healthier route, my body was detoxing from a lot of the foods I had been eating.
Interesting. And
so every day I had flares. It was very painful. I took a lot of pictures of my joints during that time because they were so swollen and I could not believe how red and puffy they were. But on day 31, I woke up without a flare.
Yeah, but a quick question. Didn't you on day 15 and day 22 go, oh my God, none of this is working? Like that's perseverance to stick with the 31 days.
Yes, but you know what? So I knew that my body was detoxing.
Okay.
So I thought, oh my gosh, my body is responding to this.
Yeah.
So instead of flipping it from a negative or like a typical, like, it's not working, I just give up. I was like, my body is trying to get rid of everything right now. And it felt more like hope. It felt like my body's responding. That's the way I decided to interpret it. So that I stayed excited. And what made it easier, during this time, my husband was doing all the cooking. I didn't know how to cook at this time. Okay. He was doing all the cooking and the meals were so good. They were delicious. So we're sleeping better. Yeah. So even though I'm having rheumatoid arthritis flares, I'm sleeping better. The food is really good. And I'm starting to lose a little bit of weight. And I thought, okay, my body's detoxing. Let's keep going. And we told ourselves, now listen, once we get through the month, we're of course going to have pizza. So we got pizza. Now it was a gluten-free pizza. Okay. And we thought when we were celebrating, right? We celebrated with toxic food, but basically we told ourselves, we're not going to eat the whole pizza. And we thought what would be most, we'd crave most was actually the dairy. Well, it ended up being the corn crust. Corn, I now know, is very addictive. And it basically turns on certain like ding, 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 dings in the brain like certain drugs. And we ate that whole pizza because we couldn't stop eating the corn crust. It was that good.
Yeah.
So the next morning we woke up, we were both puffy and swollen. And even though it had been delicious, we both decided, let's keep this going.
Yeah. It wasn't worth it.
Right. Let's keep it going. We kept it going. I lost more weight. My flares, oh my goodness, Wendy, they almost completely went away. Now I kept making little edits to my diet, but I didn't feel restricted or deprived because the food we were eating was delicious. It was like food for royalty, right? Do you see like royalty going to McDonald's? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. But instead we were having these delicious, delicious meals. So that is where we decided, okay, we can actually manage Heather's symptoms, my symptoms, by eating healthier. And what else can we do at this point is where we were at.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the hardest point, so do you think it was your intuition, your gut that said, okay, even though you were still having these flare-ups at day 25 or whatever, that you just knew that your body was doing the right thing and you were moving in the right direction? Because again, you go to your rheumatologist, right, who is the expert, right? And they immediately dismiss and poo-poo the idea of the importance of food. And this happened for me in my life. This happened for others. And what was it? Was it about you that said, I got to keep digging deeper? Because some people just give up and feel like they just have to deal with it, right? So what was it that made you just keep digging deeper?
Well, I have this insatiable curiosity as well. So not only am I hungry for life and hungry for anything, but I knew my body, it didn't let me down when I was a kid. And I know like there's this inherent wisdom that we have in our bodies. And I didn't understand, like, when I turned 17, my body let me down for the first time. And I'm like, what is going on? And what happened at that point is that I put on a lot of weight over a very short time period. And that was my body telling me, really, like, Heather, we are really struggling with the food you're giving us. Like the input I was giving to my body was not what my body wanted. And so the output was weight gain. And I lost that weight, but I put it on again, and then I lost it, and then I put it on again. Right. Yeah. And so
again, everybody can identify with that.
Yes. And so for me, when we decided to do this food experiment in my late 30s, I knew, my body has it has responded well when I've made changes in the past. And let me get really intentional and let me just start reading up on everything. I was on Google constantly looking at the different diets and looking at something called functional medicine.
Yeah. And explain that, because not a lot of people are familiar with functional medicine.
Sure.
And I mean, again, I've had my own experience, which has been really positive. So explain a little bit more about functional medicine.
Definitely. Well, so there is a place on this planet for all medicine. Conventional medicine is very, very good for acute issues. So if you break your bone, you definitely want to go to an orthopedic surgeon and get that fixed. Functional medicine is not going to really be able to help you very much with that initial fracture or break. But where conventional medicine really, really struggles is that there's this whole terrain of people like me who have chronic illness and chronic disease and autoimmune conditions. And the majority of us are female, struggling with autoimmune conditions. And that's because we don't manage or work through our stress pretty well. Men tend to work through their stress better than women. And so there are all these people with chronic issues that conventional medicine can't solve. They can solve with a pill, but really that's a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid, right? It doesn't solve it.
Exactly. So let's say you're taking a walk and you get a little rock in your shoe. Now, what conventional medicine would say is like, well, that rock sure is annoying. Let's give you a shot to see if we can kind of ignore the pain of that rock. Whereas functional medicine would say, wow, that rock is sure annoying. Let's figure out why that rock is there. And then let's remove that rock so that you can feel good again. And so what I love about functional medicine is that these are doctors, they're MDs, they're naturopaths, they're DOs, they're nurse practitioners. These are people who are specifically trained in this methodology. It's a whole systems methodology, meaning that all our systems talk to one another, that everything is connected. So instead of going to, a ear, nose, and throat doctor, for one thing, and then a leg doctor for another thing, and an arm doctor for another thing, they understand that all of these things are connected. And so they get to the root cause of whatever symptom or issue that is being expressed. And so I started digging into functional medicine, and I knew, well, I am not going back to med school, or going to med school at this point. I'm in my late 30s. But I realized that there are functional medicine trained coaches. And because I had had so much success with my personal experience, I was really attracted to the idea of learning more about functional medicine, learning more about behavior change, positive psychology, all of these amazing tools to use for behavior transformation, and found that there was a school. It was a perfect fit for me. And that is where my life, the trajectory of my life just took a massive, massive shift for the better. And some could say like, oh, poor you have all those autoimmune conditions. Doesn't that stink? And I will say, Wendy, I know it sounds goofy, but I am grateful. So some people could look at me and say, oh, poor girl, you have all these autoimmune conditions. Life must be so heavy. But I will say that they have been this, I know this is going to sound cliche, but the best blessing in disguise ever, because what they enabled me to do, or what I chose to make out of them, is that I chose to leave corporate. That really kind of felt empty, especially toward the end, really empty. Yeah. And I chose to take a risk, to face a lot of fear, to say goodbye to those corporate handcuffs, the salary, the perks, the benefits, say goodbye, and to say, I'm trying something different. I'm going to try something that I feel deep down inside I know I'm meant to do.
Yeah. And this is exactly how you and I connected so quickly, because here I had just come from learning I'm gluten sensitive and dairy and corn. I had a harder time with corn than gluten. And thank God this isn't like 1972, because there are so many other options out there for these sensitivities. But I was already struggling with, what am I going to eat? And, and like you, I had always been very active and feel like I've always eaten very healthy, right? But it still required a lot of thought and a lot of planning and a life adjustment. And at the same time, I was also at the point of career. I had been happy for a long time in the career, but the grind just kept getting at me and feeling like I was ready for more. So I think that what people who listen to the podcast and who know the work that I'm in know that the common thread with the women that I really like to learn from is that they took a risk because some detour that may have been really challenging at the time turned out to be a blessing. And because of the way they tackled it and learned from it, have changed their career and their life trajectory, and they're much happier now. So, I felt like I, had restricted eating. And I will say, after speaking with you even last year, I don't feel like I'm not missing out on anything. And you eat way fewer items than I do. I mean, because I still have tequila. And, I like my tequila. Not a lot, but but because you come from a perspective of abundance, and because I think you are seeing the immediate effects in your body and the lightness, so it just makes it a much more enjoyable path. So tell me then, or share a little bit more about then, how did you decide this is more than just, eating, right? It's just more the power of nutrition, but there's a lot more to unpack. And moving from the overloaded to living light. So talk a little bit more about that transition, and then about the work that you're doing right now, so that others who may feel like right now going, oh my God, I can't not eat what this woman's not eating. But hopefully they may start to question, maybe I need to have this checked out, right?
Yeah.
And if they want to learn a little bit more about your journey and the resources, then talk a little bit more about how you've grown into the root of well-being.
Okay, for sure. Well, I love that you are picking up the abundance that I feel. And I'm going to start with how I kind of pivoted to a mindset of abundance, because it is really easy. You know, I told you I had FOMO.
Yeah, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Missing out.
Yeah.
And there were times in the beginning when we changed our diets where I did feel some FOMO. And I did feel like, oh man, I would really like to have that pizza or that hamburger. Well, I eat hamburgers, but I would like to have those things. And another gift came my way. The universe sent another gift. And basically I decided to explore a growing movement, and it's called minimalism. Now, when you hear the word minimalism, what comes to your mind first?
Restriction, right? Less and less and less. Right.
Right. Frugality, and you can't have this, and you shouldn't have that, and you should sell every belonging you have.
Right.
Totally negative.
Yeah.
Well, some people might decide to interpret it that way, but I don't. So here are some of the gems that I've gotten from minimalism. So when we hear the term minimalism, it's all about frugality, and you can't have this, you can't have that, and woe is me, right? Or just oh, I would not want to be a minimalist. Well, I decided to make it mean something totally different. And I'm not alone in this, by the way. This is a growing movement.
No, and I'm along this mindset too.
Yes. So we think of minimalism as a pathway toward intentionality. Mm-hmm. And this intentionality is not about, oh, you have to get rid of everything, but it's the idea of finding the more in less. And the way you do that is you go for quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. So you go for fewer things, but better things. So when I translated that to food and to lifestyle, what it meant was I'm going to have better quality food. Mm-hmm. Maybe less food overall, but better quality. So that means the food is going to be more satiating. It's going to be more delicious. It's going to be better for me. And I no longer am going to have FOMO, because I flipped my FOMO to something called JOMO. And JOMO stands for the joy of missing out.
Oh, I've not heard this yet. Okay. I'm okay. Joy of missing out.
Yes. So let's go back to those, like tomatoes, right?
Right.
I can't eat tomatoes. So the doctor was wrong. Nightshades, if you have an autoimmune condition, and if it's rheumatoid arthritis, mm-hmm. anybody who has rheumatoid arthritis would probably benefit from experimenting and releasing nightshades from their diet. Tomatoes, white potatoes, peppers, things like that, because they're incredibly inflammatory, especially if you have RA. So I knew I needed to release tomatoes from my life. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I could start off with FOMO, but then I decided, well, how can I flip it to JOMO? Where is the joy of not having a tomato? I mean, mm-hmm. that perfect garden tomato with sea salt on top, right? Well, here's the JOMO. I can walk the next day if I don't eat that.
Right.
I won't get inflamed. I won't gain weight. Otherwise, I would have gained weight with the tomato.
Right. I have pain in my joints.
Yes. So much pain. And so that's the joy of missing out. And so that's a lesson I learned from this minimalism movement. And so I thought, well, how can I use JOMO for mm-hmm. other areas of my life? Because anytime my life was too full and I said yes to too many things, mm-hmm. I'd have more stress and I'd get more flares. And so I decided I'm going to face this FOMO I'm going to flip it to JOMO. I'm going to start saying no. And the way I can say no is because I realized if I say yes to everybody and everything, every good opportunity coming my way, if I say yes, then I'm saying no to the really great opportunities, the very few really, really good opportunities. Yeah. And I'm saying no to myself and to my dreams and to my goals. And instead of me designing my own life, I'm letting everybody else and their social plans design my life.
Yep.
And so embracing minimalism was huge. And now what I've done, Wendy, is that I've taken core concepts in this world of intentionality, this pathway to intentionality, and I use them in my own coaching programs. And so my coaching business, my practice, it's called Root of Wellbeing. So I help all of my clients get to their root, their own root of well-being, what is going to make them feel light, happy, bright, energetic. We figure out what those things are. We release all the clutter. So these are all the thoughts and the things that are weighing us down in our heads, our hearts, our homes. We release that clutter so that we can live those lighter lives. And so I take this minimalism, the power of minimalism and simplicity. I weave in some positive psychology, some functional nutrition. Yeah. And my clients come to me because they want to lose weight and they like the idea of this novel approach of losing weight by releasing their clutter.
Right. And so that doesn't mean that it's yo-yo dieting or anything food, any fad diet kind of thing, which is also, I think, very important as well. And I think culturally we're still learning about the impact of food, and there's so much more, I think, that will be coming out in the coming years. But I think especially for women over 45, with the hormonal changes we go through, the cultural ways we were raised, yes ma'am, and we're pleasers, we're taking care of everybody else. So everything you speak to, I think, is very important. And I really hope that somebody listening today goes, ooh, I'm taking pills for X, and I didn't realize that maybe food and a more intentional way of living could really help me as well. So I am going to be posting at therootofwellbeing.com, and we're going to post more of your resources in the notes and in the transcript so that people can find you. So I love that you also said at the beginning of your 31 days that you didn't cook, that your husband was doing the cooking. So, because I know that you cook now. So what other labels have you taken on that you maybe in your 20s and 30s never saw you taking on? Like, I never thought I'd be a gardener, and I actually have I'm eating salads out of my garden all summer. I love it. Never thought I'd be a gardener. So what label or labels have you picked up that you never saw coming?
Well, I think congratulations on the gardening. That's awesome. And that's a big deal. I mean, there's nothing better than nourishing yourself and growing your own vegetables, and they're going to be more nutrient dense and more filling. You're right. My husband did all the cooking in the beginning. I use that as an excuse my whole life. Well, I can't cook, so I need to buy processed foods. Or my whole perception of the kitchen was that basically it was a room to store food and to heat food up that was already made, and never as a place that could be nourishing or that could be energetic and meditative and fun and creative. And so I will say my husband started off that first month cooking. And then he said, okay, Heather, he's like,
step up.
You think you could learn how to make 3 meals? That's what he said. What about 3 meals? Just that might be good.
Yeah.
And I thought, you're right. Briefly, I was raised with my dad doing most of the cooking, and there are some deep-seated beliefs that I had that are kind of ridiculous, almost embarrassed to share them, but I'm going to share them. So I kind of felt like if I take on cooking, this is me in my teens and 20s and 30s, that I was setting womankind backwards. So I was raised with my dad doing the cooking. Yeah. My mom didn't like it. And even my dad's mom would tease, or she would kind of trick my grandpa, and she would make some mashed potatoes, but then throw in 1 potato. So she'd make them from a box and then throw in 1 potato and be like, ha, 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 he doesn't know. And so I thought, if I embrace cooking, I'm setting back all of womankind and female kind. And so I had that deep down inside. Yeah. And, I don't need to learn how to cook. Like, there's enough convenient food out there. I'll be fine. And I was fine for a certain amount of time until I wasn't. So when my husband was like, maybe you could kind of pick it up a little, I thought, okay, I could get bitter and like say I don't want to, or I could use this as an opportunity to learn a new skill as an adult. And so I embraced that kitchen like nobody's business. I bought a bunch of cookbooks that had simple recipes, all with whole foods that I recognized, because the cookbooks, all the other cookbooks that I had looked at throughout the years, they were so complicated. And I just thought they were meant for chefs not for everyday cooks.
Okay.
And so I learned how to cook as an adult. I mean, I did not even know how to hard boil eggs in my late 30s. And so I really had to be intentional about this though.
Mhm.
I decided if I'm going to heal, part of my healing journey really does involve that kitchen. And if I can just embrace that kitchen, maybe I won't have to take a bunch of toxic drugs.
Yeah.
And so I embrace the kitchen. I now find it so meditative and fun and creative that I can't imagine life not cooking.
And so you touched on a theme that's also important to me, which is that we were raised at a unique time in our culture, I think. And even though they were instilling values and mores, it's still, you know, times have really changed. And so
Yes.
some of their advice and recommendations and some of these thoughts that we have in our head are a little bit limiting. And it takes a lot of fortitude to get through that. So, so in addition to being now a chef and a creative cook, were there any other either mental roadblocks you had to get over? You know, like you'd set the women back if you took on cooking, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what I realized with that is that because I think that's a very ignorant thought that I was having, I realize that now because I believe the kitchen is the most powerful room in the home. I think the kitchen is where health is born. It's where health is created. And if we don't have our health, we don't have anything at all. So talk to somebody with an autoimmune condition, talk to somebody with Lyme, talk to somebody. If we don't have our health, we cannot do what we are here on this earth to do. And we can't hear what it is that we are here on this earth to do either if we don't have our health. And so to me, oh my gosh, I am raising my hand. I want to own that kitchen. I am proud to be in that kitchen and to create all of these things that can create health at a cellular level. I know my kids are stronger and happier. I am, my husband is. And so to me, it's pride because it's intention. And so it's like that I'm going to set womankind back as an excuse for not really owning my story and my health. And so that is really probably the biggest thing. And then even embracing minimalism and learning that there is so much abundance and light and energy and peace when you can embrace this intentional way of living, that it's not restriction. And the way I eat, Wendy, also, it doesn't feel restrictive at all. It feels so abundant and so delicious. I don't miss anything because everything I eat is way better and more delicious than anything I used to eat before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the JOMO too, the joy of missing out. I love that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then, so to end on a little lighter note, no pun intended there, but okay. So because we were raised in a unique time and because I believe, you know, we had such unique films and television shows and music. Yes. Things that, you know, I think of like the Cosby Show. We had the Brady Bunch. That was a divorced family that lived together. Like what? Right. So tell me one, either television show or movie or something that resonated with you in the 80s or maybe early 90s that you went, ooh, and it really stuck with you.
Okay. So you're going to probably chuckle a little at this, but I was raised in a Midwestern family in Ohio. My dad was a professor. My mom was a lawyer. They did a lot of work for the community, and they were very anti-TV.
Oh, okay.
And so we were not raised with cable.
Okay.
We were allowed to watch one show a week if we were lucky, and we were only allowed to watch The Cosby Show.
The Cosby Show.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, they had decided that show was okay. I wanted to watch Little House on the Prairie. And my parents said no, because the show did not follow the book narrative. And so I was very upset. Lots and lots of tears. That I could not watch Little House on the Prairie. And then in grade school, because I was born in the 70s, and early 70s, and my friends would get together in grade school and they'd talk about the after school special from the day before. That's probably where my FOMO was born.
Oh, yes.
No idea. what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I guess it would just go back to with the Cosby Show. I loved all the dancing. I loved the lightness, the happiness,
Yes.
the intentionality, the family time. Like that was probably, and that's the only thing I can draw from anyway.
Yeah. No, but that's perfect. And I actually use the Cosby Show a lot when I think about, again, cultural significance, because Claire was an attorney, right? Moms were attorneys. Like, I don't remember that in the 60s or the 50s, right? And so, it was just an interesting time, I think, for women especially. So it was really great to see a family who were happy together, and the teenagers weren't rebelling against their parents, or their version of rebelling wasn't, total.
It was pretty clean.
It was pretty clean. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So Heather, thank you for coming and joining me today and sharing your story. But I'm hoping it also inspires others to be more assertive and assess their overall health, their physical health, their mental health, their emotional health, and really more holistically, and take the daily steps towards less clutter and less overload and more fulfillment in life. So check out Heather's website, which is therootofwellbeing.com, to learn more on how to work with Heather and the resources she provides. Also, I hope you'll check out a little bit more about my book, Destination Unknown. And excitingly, I'm also happy to announce that coming next month is the next group collaboration book on women who are resilient. And this includes Heather, talking about the detours that we've experienced in our lives and how the stories and the paths that we've taken to overcome the difficult chapters and reframe. So you're going to see that theme, this reframe, how we're tackling it, and how it's actually helped us become mentally tougher, more resilient, and way happier. And something I think many of us can use right now. So thanks so much, Heather, for being here, and come back and visit again soon.
Wendy, you are such a bright light, and thank you so much for including me and having me. It's always so much fun to connect with you.
It's great to see you too. All right. Thanks so much, Heather. And thanks everybody for listening in.